My name is Mandy, and at 32 years old, I thought I had finally escaped the financial manipulation that defined my childhood. After 14 years of building independence, I let my guard down at our family reunion. The next morning, I discovered $78,000 missing from my account. When confronted, my father simply snorted, "We needed it more than you." That moment shattered any illusion of family I still clung to. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for Warth stories. If you've ever had to protect yourself from those who should have protected you, growing up with financially unstable parents shaped every aspect of my childhood. My father, Robert, never met a gambling opportunity he could resist. Slot machines, card games, sports betting, even illegal dogfights in abandoned warehouses. He'd disappear for days, then return either flushed with cash and bearing extravagant gifts, or, more commonly, defeated and desperate, looking for anything of value to pawn. My mother, Diana, enabled his behavior at every turn. She worked as a bank teller, ironically, but her paycheck never lasted long. "Your father just needs one good win," she'd assure me while searching my room for spare change. "His luck is about to turn around." My earliest memory of their financial exploitation happened when I was 6. I had diligently saved birthday money from my grandmother in a pink ceramic piggy bank shaped like a ballet dancer. For months, I dropped in quarters from lemonade stands and dollars from helping neighbors with small chores. The weight of it gave me such pride. One night, I heard a crash from my bedroom. I found my father standing over the shattered remains of my piggy bank, coins clutched in his fist. "Just borrowing this, princess," he said without looking at me. "Double your money by morning, I promise." The money never returned, neither did any of the subsequent piggy banks. My allowance, when I actually received it, became a family joke, borrowing from the Mandy Bank. My father would announce while taking the $5 meant to last me the week. By 16, I had learned to hide money in places they'd never look. By 17, I had a secret bank account under my Aunt Lisa's name. By 18, I was out the door with $342 to my name and a promise to myself that I'd never depend on anyone again. Those first years of independence were brutal. I worked as a waitress, from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., then as a retail clerk until 10 p.m., sleeping barely 4 hours before starting again. Community college classes filled the gaps between shifts. I lived in a studio apartment with 4 other girls, each claiming a corner, sharing a bathroom with the entire floor. Through sheer determination, I maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 70-hour weeks. A marketing internship during my junior year became my salvation. My boss, Vivian, recognized something in me I barely saw in myself. She mentored me, recommended me for a paid position, and wrote a glowing recommendation that helped me land an entry-level marketing job after graduation. For the next decade, I climbed methodically. Junior copywriter to content strategist to campaign manager to department lead. Every promotion came with financial discipline. While colleagues bought new cars and took exotic vacations, I lived in the same one-bedroom apartment, drove the same reliable sedan, and put every spare dollar into savings and investments. Last year, at 31, everything culminated in my promotion to senior marketing director at one of Seattle's largest firms. My salary doubled. For the first time, I breathed easily about money. The $78,000 in my savings account represented more than just cash, was my freedom, the down payment on a house I'd picked out, the foundation of the secure life I'd built inch by painful inch. Throughout those years, my relationship with my parents remained strained but civil. They called when they needed money, which I initially provided with the naive hope of earning their approval just until payday. They'd promise, or just to cover the electric bill. The loans were never repaid, and the requests grew larger. After losing $5,000 to them 3 years ago for emergency medical bills that I later discovered funded a gambling trip to Atlantic City, I set firm boundaries. No more money, no more money, no more bailouts, no more enabling. Their response was predictable. I became the cold daughter, the selfish one who abandoned her family, the ungrateful child who forgot where she came from. Monthly calls devolved into quarterly, text messages, then near silence. When the invitation to the family reunion arrived last month, I almost tossed it. 3 years of minimal contact had given me space to heal. My therapist, Dr. Winter, suggested attending with strong boundaries might provide closure. "You can engage without being vulnerable," she advised. Observe, rather than participate. So, against my better judgment, I confirmed my attendance one weekend. One chance to see if any real family connection was possible. Maybe time and distance had changed our dynamic. Maybe they'd grown as I had. Maybe, how desperately I wanted to believe we could be a normal family. How completely that hope would betray me. I arrived at my parents' house on a Friday evening, in June, immediately noticing renovations that seemed impossible on their claimed income. The shabby bungalow of my childhood now boasted fresh siding, a wraparound porch with wicker furniture, and landscaping that screamed professional maintenance. When I commented on the changes, my mother waved dismissively. Your father's been doing handyman work for neighbors. You know how clever he is with repairs. I did know clever enough to jury-rig solutions that inevitably failed within weeks. Nothing my father built ever lasted. These renovations spoke of skilled contractors and substantial investment. The interior told the same story. New hardwood, floors replaced, stained carpet, kitchen appliances gleamed with showroom shine, and a 17-inch television dominated the living room wall. For people who regularly pleaded for help with utility bills, they lived surprisingly well. Mandy, my Aunt Lisa, embraced me at the door, whispering, "Brace yourself, honey. Everyone's in rare form tonight." Aunt Lisa had been my lifeline. During the worst years, the one adult who saw through my parents' manipulation. Her presence gave me comfort. The house filled quickly with extended family cousins I barely recognized. Uncles arguing politics, children racing through rooms. In the kitchen, my mother held court, accepting compliments on her elaborate spread of catered food she claimed to have prepared herself. There she is. My father spotted me from across the room, the big career woman. Come give your old man a hug. He seemed genuinely proud, bragging to everyone, my daughter, the marketing executive, his arm draped heavily across my shoulders as he paraded me around. Always knew she was smart. Gets that from my side, you know. My mother was equally attentive, bringing me drinks I didn't request, introducing me repeatedly as our successful daughter. She asked detailed questions about my job, my apartment, my friend's interest she'd never shown before. They're laying it on thick. My younger brother, Jacob, muttered, when we had a moment alone. Jacob had followed my example, moving out at 18 and maintaining careful distance. At 28, he worked as an auto mechanic in Portland, visiting our parents only on major holidays. Mom asked if you were still with that investment broker, he warned. Seems really interested in your financial situation. Patrick and I broke up 6 months ago, I replied, confused. I told her that when it happened. Jacob raised an eyebrow. She also mentioned you must be doing really well to afford that luxury condo downtown. I live in a standard apartment in Capitol Hill, nothing luxurious about it. A familiar unease crept up my spine. They were fishing for information, testing waters despite these warning signs. Part of me desperately wanted to believe this weekend could heal old wounds. When we gathered for dinner and my father asked me to sit at his right hand, I felt a childish pleasure I couldn't suppress. When he listened intently to my explanation of our latest marketing campaign, I glimpsed the father I'd always wanted. After dinner, cousins I hadn't seen in years pulled out photo albums. We laughed over embarrassing childhood pictures and reminisced about summers at the lake. For a few hours, it felt like genuine connection. Remember when Mandy saved up for 6 months to buy that bicycle? My mother said, pointing to a photo of 12-year-old me proudly standing beside a blue Schwinn. She was so independent even then. What she didn't mention was how that bicycle disappeared 2 weeks later, supposedly stolen from our garage. I later found the receipt where my father had sold it to a pawn shop. Independent and smart with money, my father added. Not like her old dad, but, hey, that reminds me, how's that investment portfolio of yours doing, Patrick? Had you in some good stocks, right? The question seemed casual, but his eyes held unusual focus. Still basking in the warm attention, I answered more openly than I should have. Actually, I switched advisors after Patrick and I split. My new investments have performed really well this year. My advisor shifted some assets into tech startups that nearly tripled. My father whistled. Smart girl. Bet you've got a nice nest egg growing. She does. My Aunt Lisa interrupted firmly. And she works incredibly hard for every penny of it. The conversation shifted, but financial topics kept resurfacing. How much did marketing directors make these days? Was I planning any big purchases soon? Had I considered helping Jacob with his student loans? By midnight, exhausted from constant vigilance, I excused myself to the guest room. I placed my purse with my wallet and phone in the bedside drawer, a habit from years of protecting my belongings, before sleep claimed me. I felt something I hadn't experienced in my parents' home for decades. A fragile hope that perhaps we could build something resembling a healthy family relationship. That hope would not survive the morning. I woke at 7:30 a.m. to my phone buzzing with transaction alerts. Half asleep, I opened my banking app, expecting a coffee shop purchase or streaming service renewal. Instead, I froze at the balance displayed, $837.22. Yesterday, that account had contained $78,837.22. My first thought was a technical glitch. I closed the app, cleared the cache, and reopened it. The balance remained unchanged. Heart pounding, I checked my transaction history. A series of transfers had drained the account, all processed between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., all authorized from an unknown device, still in pajamas. I called the bank's fraud department, pacing the small guest room while on hold. When a representative finally answered, the conversation destroyed any hope of an easy resolution. "Yes, Miss Carter. We show several large transfers from your savings account last night." "I didn't authorize those transfers," I insisted. "It must be fraud. According to our records, the transfers were authorized using your correct password and the authentication app on your registered device. The accessing IP address shows." She paused. "The location appears to be your current location, according to our records." My blood ran cold. "Can you tell me exactly where the transfers went?" "Several different accounts. The largest was to a Robert Carter. Is that name familiar to you?" My own father had accessed my accounts and drained my savings, while I slept under his roof. I ended the call and frantically searched my purse. My wallet appeared untouched, but when I checked the secondary phone compartment where I kept a small notebook with account information, I noticed subtle differences in how items were arranged. Someone had gone through my bag. Memories from the previous evening flashed through my mind, my mother insisting on taking my jacket to hang it properly. My purse left briefly in the living room when Lisa called me to see something in the garden. The unusually deep sleep I'd fallen into after the single glass of wine my mother pressed upon me. They had planned this the entire reunion, the unusual warmth, the pointed questions about my finances, all leading to this betrayal. The physical symptoms hit then. My hands trembled so badly I dropped my phone. Nausea drove me to the bathroom, where I retched painfully. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool morning air. $78 my house down payment, my emergency fund, A text message from my cousin Ellie appeared. "Thanks for the amazing gift. How did you know I wanted this exact laptop for college? Uncle Rob said you insisted on helping with my education." Then another from Uncle Thomas. "Generous of you to contribute to the family vacation rental. Rob says you're covering half." And finally, from my brother, "Mandy, call me ASAP, something's wrong. Mom and Dad are suddenly flushed with cash, buying everyone gifts." I called Jacob immediately, struggling to keep my voice steady as I explained what happened. "I knew it," he said, voice tight with anger. "They've been planning this for months. Dad told me last week they were expecting a windfall soon. I thought maybe he'd gotten a decent job." "Mandy, I'm so sorry. Did you know they'd do this?" I asked, needing certainty. "No, God, no, I would have warned you. But I knew something was off about this whole reunion. They've never cared about family gatherings before." As we spoke, I heard activity downstairs, laughter, the clink of dishes. My parents and remaining family members having breakfast as if they hadn't just committed theft against their own daughter. $78, Jacob. Everything I saved for. My house, years of work. How could they do this? "Because they don't see it as yours," he replied softly. "In their minds, family money is communal, and they deserve it more because they're the parents. They'll never understand what they did was wrong." I ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to gather my thoughts. This wasn't just a family dispute, it was theft, plain and simple. They had accessed my accounts without permission and transferred my money to themselves. The fact that they were my parents changed nothing about the legality of their actions. But family complications made everything messier. Would the police take this seriously? Would the bank reverse the transfers when the access came from my own devices with my passwords? What would this do to the extended family if I pursued charges against my own parents? $78,000. I couldn't simply write it off. That money represented years of sacrifice, ramen dinners, declined social invitations, 60-hour work weeks, delayed dreams. I heard my father's booming laugh from downstairs, followed by my mother's delighted response. They were celebrating while I sat shattered. In the guest room, they were celebrating their theft as if it were a windfall they'd earned. In that moment, something hardened inside me. The last lingering hope of reconciliation died. The last obligation of familial loyalty evaporated. They weren't family, they were thieves who happened to share my DNA, and I would treat them accordingly. My first instinct was to storm downstairs and call the police immediately. But years of dealing with my parents had taught me that impulsive reactions gave them power. They thrived in chaos and emotional outbursts. If I wanted justice, I needed to be strategic. I texted my friend Sarah, a financial crimes attorney. Despite the early hour on a Saturday, she responded immediately. Do not confront them alone. Document everything. Call the bank again and formally report the fraud. I'll meet you at my office at noon. Next, I called Aunt Lisa, who had left for her hotel late the previous night. I wondered if something like this might happen, she said, her voice heavy with disappointment. Your mother's been dropping hints about a new car and home improvements for weeks. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't go downstairs alone. While waiting for Lisa, I methodically gathered evidence. I took screenshots of the unauthorized transfers, photographed the location where my bag had been searched, and recorded a video walkthrough of the house, documenting the recent expensive purchases that contradicted my parents' claimed financial hardship. I also found something disturbing on my phone. A notification showed my banking authentication app had been accessed at 2:15 a.m. while I was asleep. They must have used my fingerprint while I slept to authenticate the transfers. The violation made me physically ill. When Lisa arrived, I quietly slipped out the back door to meet her in her car. She hugged me tightly as I finally broke down. I know a good lawyer, she said when my tears subsided. Your cousin Michael handles financial crimes. This is theft, Mandy, plain and simple. The fact that they're your parents makes it worse, not better. We drove to Sarah's office, where she and Michael were waiting. For the next 3 hours, we built a case. Sarah contacted the bank's fraud department with her credentials, establishing a formal investigation. Michael prepared documentation for a police report. Lisa provided written testimony about my parents' spending patterns and comments they'd made about accessing my money. Here's what we need to understand, Michael explained gently. This will get ugly. Your parents will claim you gave them permission. They'll say it was a gift or a loan. They'll turn family members against you. Are you prepared for that? They already stole my money, I replied. What else can they take from me? Your relationships with extended family, your peace of mind, your energy for months or years of legal proceedings. Sarah counted off. This won't be quick or easy. Neither was earning that money, I said firmly. I want it back. All of it. We developed a multi-pronged approach. First, the bank would freeze any remaining funds in the transferred accounts. Second, we'd file a police report for identity theft and fraud. Third, we'd confront my parents with legal representation present, giving them one opportunity to return the money before escalating to criminal charges. Before leaving Sarah's office, I called Dr. Winter and scheduled an emergency session that afternoon. You need emotional support as much as legal support, she reminded me. This is a profound betrayal by the people who should have protected you most. I spent an hour with Dr. Winter, processing the complex emotions swirling through me at the violation. Grief for the family relationship I'd foolishly hoped was possible, shame at having let my guard down despite years of evidence that my parents hadn't changed. You did nothing wrong by hoping for a healthy relationship with your parents, Dr. Winter assured me. That desire is natural and human. They're the ones who violated trust, not you. By evening, our legal strategy was in place. Sarah had prepared a formal demand letter. The bank had flagged the accounts where my money had been transferred. Michael had filed preliminary paperwork for a police report, pending my final decision on pressing charges. I spent the night at Lisa's hotel, unable to face returning to my parents' house. Throughout the evening, I received increasingly concerned texts from Jacob, who had left the reunion early to drive back to Portland. They're buying everyone gifts with your money, he reported. It's disgusting. In the morning, Lisa, Sarah, Michael, and I met for breakfast to review our approach one final time. Michael had arranged for a sheriff's deputy to accompany us, waiting outside unless needed. Sarah had all legal documents organized in a portfolio. Lisa had contacted key family members who'd witnessed my parents' sudden spending, securing their support if testimony became necessary. I packed a small bag with the evidence we'd gathered, including records of previous financial manipulations by my parents, documented proof of the source of the stolen funds, and my years of bank statements showing disciplined saving. I also carried printouts of text messages where my parents had previously borrowed money with promises of repayment that never materialized. Most importantly, I brought my resolve. For 32 years, I'd alternated between seeking their approval and protecting myself from their exploitation. Today would end that cycle permanently. Are you ready? Sarah asked as we pulled up in front of my parents' house. I took a deep breath. I've been ready for this my entire life. We arrived at my parents' house at exactly 10 a.m., the sheriff's deputy parked discreetly down the street, ready to approach when signaled. Michael stayed in the car with him while Sarah, Lisa, and I walked to the front door. My hand trembled slightly as I rang the doorbell of the home where I'd grown up. No matter how prepared I thought I was, confronting the people who'd raised me, then betrayed me, sent adrenaline coursing through my body. My father answered, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a practiced smile. Mandy, we wondered where you disappeared to yesterday. And Lisa, good to see you again. Who's your friend? This is Sarah, I said flatly. My attorney. His smile faltered for a moment before returning, tighter than before. Attorney, what's this about? Diana, come see who's here. My mother appeared behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes darted nervously between us, lingering on Sarah's professional attire and the portfolio tucked under her arm. May we come in? Lisa asked, her tone making it clear this wasn't really a question. My father stepped back, ushering us into the living room, where just 2 days ago, we'd shared family photos and laughter. Now, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Robert, Diana, I began formally, you know exactly why I'm here. You accessed my financial accounts without permission and transferred $78,000 to yourselves and others. My father didn't even attempt to deny it. Instead, he scoffed, settling heavily into his new leather recliner. It's just money. Mandy, you have plenty more where that came from, with your fancy job. That was my house down payment, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. Money I saved for 14 years. We needed it more, he said with a dismissive wave. The family needed it. You'd understand if you weren't so selfish. My mother stepped forward, eyes wide with practiced innocence. Honey, we were going to discuss it with you. We just knew you'd say no if we asked first. You always say no these days. Because you never repay what you borrow, I countered. That's theft, not borrowing. We gave you life, my father snapped, his facade of joviality evaporating. Everything you have comes from us. That makes it family money. Sarah stepped forward, opening her portfolio. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I represent Mandy in this matter. What you've described is not how the law views parent-child relationships or financial obligations. You've committed identity theft, bank fraud, and grand larceny. My mother's eyes filled with tears. How could you bring a lawyer against your own parents after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. Stolen my childhood savings. Taken the bicycle I bought with my own money. Borrowed thousands you never repaid. Or are you referring to accessing my accounts while I slept in your home as a guest? You ungrateful little, my father began, rising from his chair. I've documented everything, I interrupted. Every unauthorized transfer, every account where my money was sent, every purchase you've made since stealing it. The bank has already frozen the remaining funds. My father's face flushed red. You can't prove anything. You stayed in our house. Maybe you gave us your passwords. Maybe you authorized those transfers yourself and now you're having regrets. Actually, Sarah interjected, the transfers occurred between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. while Mandy was asleep. The authentication was completed using her fingerprint while she was unconscious. Possibly after being given something to ensure deep sleep. That elevates this to a more serious category of crime. My mother's tears dried instantly. You've always been dramatic, Mandy. Always exaggerating. No one will believe you over us. The evidence speaks for itself, Lisa said. And I'll testify to your comments about accessing Mandy's accounts, Diana. So will others who heard you discussing it. You have a choice, I said, reaching for my bag where we'd placed the legal documents. Return my money in full by tomorrow, or I press charges for theft and fraud." My father laughed, a harsh sound lacking humor. "Go ahead. See how that plays with the family when you drag your own parents to court. Who do you think they'll side with? The daughter who abandoned her family or the parents who sacrificed everything for her?" "Then you won't mind what comes next," I said, hands still on my bag. At that precise moment, a loud bang shook the house as the sheriff's deputy knocked firmly on the front door. My father's laughter died abruptly. The door flew open as Michael entered with the deputy, legal papers in hand. "Robert and Diana Carter," the deputy asked, though it was clearly a formality. "I have here an emergency order freezing your assets in connection with a fraud investigation." My father jumped to his feet. "This is ridiculous. You can't just barge into my home." "Actually, sir, I can," the deputy replied. "I have a warrant related to the financial crimes investigation." He handed him the document. "These accounts have been flagged for suspicious activity consistent with identity theft and unauthorized transfers." My mother began to cry, again, this time with genuine fear. "Mandy, how could you do this to us? We're your parents." "Parents don't steal from their children," I replied steadily. "They protect them." The confrontation escalated quickly. My father's indignation turned to rage, then panic, as he realized the seriousness of the situation. My mother alternated between pleading and accusing, claiming I'd always been selfish, cold, and misunderstood them. As the deputy explained the legal process, the front door opened again. My Aunt Ruth and Uncle Thomas entered for the weekend barbecue my parents had planned to celebrate their windfall. "What's going on here?" Ruth asked, taking in the scene with confusion. "Your brother stole $78,000 from Mandy's accounts," Lisa explained bluntly. "Now he's facing the consequences." The look of shock on their faces confirmed they hadn't known the source of my parents' sudden generosity. "Rob, tell me this isn't true," Uncle Thomas demanded. "Tell me you didn't steal from your own daughter." My father's silence was answer enough. As more family members arrived for the barbecue, the scene became chaotic. Some defended my parents out of reflexive loyalty. Others, hearing the details, stepped back in horror. My cousin Ellie tearfully offered to return the laptop purchased with my stolen money. Jacob arrived, having driven through the night from Portland, and stood firmly by my side. Throughout it all, I maintained the calm certainty that had come with my decision. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. About breaking the cycle of exploitation that had defined our relationship for decades. By afternoon, my parents faced a stark reality. Their accounts were frozen, their recent purchases documented. As evidence, family members who'd received gifts were returning them, horrified to learn they'd been bought with stolen money. The facade of generous parents crumbled, revealing the truth they'd hidden for years. "This isn't over," my father threatened as we prepared to leave. "Family doesn't do this to family." "You're right," I agreed. "Meeting is gaze. Family doesn't do this to family. Remember that the next time you consider stealing from your daughter." We left them standing in their renovated living room, surrounded by material goods they'd valued more than their relationship with their child. As painful as the confrontation had been, with each step away from that house, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I'd refused to be their victim. The weeks following unfolded in a blur of legal proceedings, emotional processing, and practical adjustments. The immediate financial impact was significant. While the bank had frozen my parents' accounts, recovering the money proved complicated. Some had already been spent. Other portions had been transferred to relatives who'd unknowingly accepted gifts. Michael guided me through filing a formal police report, resulting in my parents being charged with identity theft and financial fraud. The prosecuting attorney warned the case could take months, especially if my parents fought the charges. "They'll fight," I told him with certainty. "Admitting guilt would mean admitting they were wrong. They're incapable of that." Sure enough, my parents hired a defense attorney specializing in family financial disputes. Their strategy emerged quickly. They claimed the money was a gift, that I'd given them my passwords voluntarily, that this was just a daughter regretting helping her struggling parents. The family fractured along predictable lines. Some relatives, particularly those who'd benefited from my parents' temporary wealth, stood with them. Others who'd witnessed their manipulative behavior supported me. The family group chat exploded with accusations, my character questioned by people who barely knew me. "How could you put your own parents through this?" my cousin Ryan demanded at the courthouse. "Over money. Is that all family means to you?" "This isn't about money," I replied. This is about trust, respect, and boundaries. They violated all three. Aunt Lisa became my rock during this period. She opened her home when I needed escape from the stress and attended every legal proceeding. Her silent presence, a reminder that not all family relationships were toxic. Jacob struggled with his own emotions. While he supported my legal action, the reality of potentially seeing our parents convicted weighed heavily. I keep thinking about Dad teaching me to ride a bike. He confessed during a late-night call, or Mom making soup when I was sick. Were those moments real, or just more manipulation? Both can be true, I told him. They can have loved us and still treated us terribly. We can remember the good moments without excusing the bad ones. Professionally, the situation created challenges. I took emergency leave to handle legal proceedings, explaining the situation to my boss in humiliating detail to justify my absence during a crucial campaign launch. Vivian, my mentor-turned-supervisor, was supportive. Family financial abuse is more common than people realize, she said. Take the time you need. Your job will be waiting. My financial security, so carefully built over 14 years, had been shattered overnight. While I had other investments and a steady income, the loss of my house down payment meant delaying that dream indefinitely. I moved money to a new bank with enhanced security measures, including biometric verification that couldn't be accessed while I slept. The mental health toll was significant. Despite weekly sessions with Dr. Winter, I struggled with trust issues. That affected every relationship. I became hypervigilant about my finances, checking accounts multiple times daily. Sleep eluded me as I replayed the betrayal in endless loops. What you're experiencing is trauma, Dr. Winter explained. Being victimized by parents creates a unique injury because it violates our most fundamental trust. Social media became a battlefield. My mother, skilled at playing the victim, posted heartbreaking updates about her ungrateful daughter, who'd turned on her parents in their time of need. Distant relatives and family friends, unaware of our history, left comments supporting them and condemning me. I deactivated my accounts, cutting off another connection to the extended family I'd hoped to rebuild relationships with. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I wavered. The stress had affected my health. I'd lost 12 pounds, developed insomnia, and suffered frequent migraines. Legal bills mounted despite Michael's reduced family rate. I wondered if pursuing the case was worth the cost, not in money, but in well-being. I called Lisa in a moment of weakness. Maybe I should let it go, write off the money as the cost of finally learning who they really are. You could, she acknowledged. No one would blame you for prioritizing your peace over justice. But Mandy, this cycle will never end unless you end it. Your parents have never faced consequences for their actions. That's why they keep repeating them. She was right. Throughout my childhood and early adulthood, my parents had faced no repercussions for their financial exploitation. Each time they took without permission, borrowed without repaying, or violated boundaries without apology, they learned their behavior was acceptable. The next day, I reaffirmed my commitment to seeing the case through, not out of vengeance, but to break a pattern that had defined too much of my life. As summer turned to fall, small victories accumulated. The bank restored $34,000 that had been directly traced and recovered. My cousin Ellie returned the laptop, and several relatives returned gifts or paid equivalent value. My parents' attempt to transfer ownership of their house to Uncle Thomas to protect it from judgments was blocked by the court. Most significantly, I began building a new support system of chosen family. My friends' circle rallied with weekend dinners, movie nights, and the gift of normalcy amid chaos. My colleague Zoe invited me to her family's Thanksgiving, where I experienced holiday warmth without underlying tension for the first time. Healing wasn't linear. Some days, I felt strong and certain. Others, I questioned everything, wondering if I was overreacting or unforgiving. Dr. Winter assured me these fluctuations were normal. Family relationships are complicated because they're involuntary, she explained. Society places enormous pressure to maintain those relationships, regardless of harm. Giving yourself permission to prioritize your well-being over family obligation is a profound act of self-care. By December, 7 months after the theft, I'd recovered nearly $50,000 through legal mechanisms. My parents still faced criminal charges, with a trial date set for February. The family remained divided, though some relatives who'd initially sided with my parents quietly reached out after learning more details. The most unexpected development came from Jacob, who'd processed his childhood through therapy and emerged with clarity I sometimes lacked. They'll never change, he told me over coffee during a rare visit. But we can. We can build something better, healthier, not with them, but with each other, and the people we choose to call family. For the first time since the theft, I felt genuine hope, not the naive hope that led me to the reunion, but something stronger, built on self-respect and boundaries. 1 year after discovering the theft, I stood in the courtroom as the judge delivered the final ruling. My parents accepted a plea agreement, admitting to lesser charges of unauthorized access and financial exploitation in exchange for reduced penalties. The court ordered full restitution of the stolen funds plus interest, totaling $84,620. They were sentenced to 3 years probation, mandatory financial counseling, and 200 hours of community service. The conviction would remain on their records permanently as they left the courtroom. My mother attempted one final manipulation, approaching me with tears streaming down her face. We only wanted what was best for the family, she insisted. Someday you'll understand what it means to sacrifice for people you love. I looked at the woman who'd given me life, then spent decades taking pieces of it back. I already understand sacrifice, I replied quietly. I sacrificed the fantasy of having parents who put my well-being above their desires. That ends today. My father didn't speak to me at all. His eyes, so like my own, held only resentment as he followed my mother out of the courtroom. That silent exit marked the end of our relationship more definitively than any legal judgment could. The decision to permanently cut contact with my parents wasn't easy. Society expects endless forgiveness for family, regardless of harm. There your parents became a refrain from well-meaning friends and relatives who didn't understand the betrayal's depth. Dr. Winter helped me navigate this terrain. Forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same, she explained. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, to release the anger binding you to them. Reconciliation requires genuine remorse and changed behavior from the other party. My parents showed neither. Their court-mandated apology letter blamed circumstances, minimized their actions, and suggested I'd overreacted. They hadn't earned reconciliation, and I'd learned to trust my judgment above social expectations. With the legal battle concluded, I focused on rebuilding. The recovered money went back into my house fund, now supplemented by a promotion to executive marketing director with a substantial salary increase. By spring, I placed a down payment on a small craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood, my first true sanctuary. The process of healing proved more complex than the legal proceedings. Trust came slowly, even with those who'd never betrayed me. I developed new financial habits, creating multiple layers of security around my accounts. Perhaps most importantly, I learned to distinguish between healthy generosity and exploitative expectations. Money is just a tool, my financial therapist explained. The problem was never your money, but how your parents used it to control and manipulate. Healthy financial relationships involve mutual respect, clear boundaries, and explicit agreements. I practiced those principles helping Jacob establish his financial independence. When he opened his auto repair shop, I invested as a silent partner with clearly documented terms. Our business relationship strengthened our sibling bond rather than complicating it. Aunt Lisa remained a cornerstone of my chosen family. Our Sunday brunches becoming a cherished tradition. You remind me of myself at your age, she told me once. Building a life on your own terms, despite what the family expected. I'm proud of you, Mandy. Her words healed something profound. The approval I'd sought from my parents for decades meant nothing compared to the genuine pride from someone who truly saw me. My circle of chosen family expanded. Zoe and her husband included me in holidays and celebrations. My colleague Trevor, who'd provided unwavering support during the legal proceedings, became more than a friend. Our relationship progressed slowly as I learned to trust again, his patience never wavering. Perhaps the most surprising development came through my work with a support group for survivors of family financial abuse. Sharing my story helped others recognize patterns in their families. While their experiences validated my decision to prioritize my well-being, you gave me permission to protect myself. One group member told me, if you could stand up to your parents after 32 years, I could finally tell my brother to stop using my credit cards. 2 years after the theft, I celebrated my 34th birthday surrounded by people who loved me without conditions, supported me without exploitation, and respected my boundaries without resentment. Looking around at those faces, I realized I'd created something my biological family could never provide. Relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. the deepest lesson I learned was that family is defined by behavior, not blood. My parents gave me genetic material and basic survival, but never the unconditional love and protection that define true parenting. The people who earned the title of family demonstrated love through respect, support, and celebration of my independence. I still encounter well-meaning people who insist I should reconcile with my parents. They won't be around forever, they caution. You'll regret not making peace. What they fail to understand is that I've made peace not with my parents, but with myself. I've made peace with the reality that some relationships can't be healed because one party refuses to acknowledge the harm they've caused. I've made peace with prioritizing my well-being over social expectations. I've made peace with creating my own definition of family. The money was recovered. The house was purchased. The legal case was closed. But the true resolution came in recognizing my own worth and refusing to accept less than the respect I deserved, even from those who brought me into this world. Family isn't who you come from, it's who you choose, who chooses you in return, and who proves that choice through actions, not mere biology. In building my chosen family, I found the security and belonging my parents could never provide. That's a lesson worth every painful step of this journey. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who didn't respect your financial independence? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Warth Stories for more stories about setting boundaries and building healthy relationships. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to protect your peace, even from those who claim to love you. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in every relationship.